Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, his is a touch screen.
Yours is too, I think.
No, it's not.
You're on the air, Mike. Okay, I've been advised that we have arranged for a patch to the IT challenge. So with great pleasure, I call the February 10th City Council Committee of the Whole to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Arifalo?
Here.
Raritan?
Here.
Crawford?
Here.
Frank?
Here.
Freeman?
Here.
McGee?
Here.
Porter?
Here.
Ratcliffe?
Here.
Snow?
Here.
Stevens?
Here.
10 present.
Well, we're all here, isn't that nice? Under public comment this evening, we have no one signed up to share anything. For public forum, the same. Excuse me. Under reports of officers, boards, and special committees, nothing under building, planning, and zoning unfinished business. Under building, planning, and zoning new business, under A, we have the community development budget presentation. Turn the floor over to our building director, and to Becky. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the Department of Community Development is to implement a vision of balanced and intelligent growth for the city of Belvidere through effective measures of planning, design review, construction plan approval, and code compliance to preserve and enhance the quality of life. We communicate that vision to the citizens while engaging the public and promoting community spirit by assisting with festivals, community activities, and events. Some of the accomplishments for 2018-19: maintained an efficient office environment, created updated builders packets, continued serving as planning consultants for the Village of Poplar Grove, continued updating planning files and linking to GIS, continued scanning plats for the county clerk's office, plans for the general public, participated in the planning and execution of Heritage Days, Chili Cook-Off, Hometown Christmas, and strolls on Buchanan. Provided a good level of health and safety for all Belvidere residents, continued effort to build and maintain relationships with local business owners and developers. Objectives for 2020: assist with the 2020 census, continue cross-training staff for a more efficient department, continue to process planning, zoning, and subdivision applications, as well as zoning ordinance, text amendments, work closely with growth dimensions for economic development, continued participation in the planning and execution of Heritage Days, Chili Cook-Off, Hometown Christmas, and strolls on Buchanan. Continue working with and developing the Belvidere Historic Preservation Commission. Have an IASFM certified floodplain manager on staff. Working relationships with the fire department, public works, police department, county health, county administration, design professionals, and property owners. Department of Community Development currently operates with 4 full-time personnel, a part-time plans examiner inspector, a part-time GIS specialist, and a part-time electrical inspector. Got a copy of the budget?
Yes, sir.
So page 1 of 16 shows proposed revenues, expenses, cash flow. Looks like a 8.9% change from the previous year. Any questions? Page 2, we're projecting $158,827 in building permits. This number is generated from past budgets and proposed projects that we think are in the books. I think with what's come across lately, we're probably going to exceed that, hopefully. Page 3 is an estimate of the electrical permits for the fiscal year. Page 4 is the electrical certification fees projected for fiscal year.
We have a question. Alderman
I'm
Snow?
sorry.
That's okay. Generally speaking, I know fees and that for the building department and the community development are supposed to help offset its expenditures. And obviously, it appears that we consistently, well, in the last couple of years have run in a deficit. And I didn't know if that's due to the fact we're not charging enough for different fees. You know, should we be irking them up just a little bit in order to cover that?
I don't think the fee schedule's been adjusted since 2006.
That's about right.
I would say, looking back over the past 4 to 5 years, we average 12 residential homes a year. Probably in 2006, we were averaging 150 to 200. The fees at that time were adjusted accordingly to, the department was self-efficient at that time with a staff of 8. We're pretty well cut to the bone right now. We eliminated a full-time inspector and brought one on part-time. Other than, you know, a catastrophic incidents such as roof, hail, or something like that, where we're going to pull in a bunch of permits, it's all development driven.
So I guess my question is whether or not, I know we have on occasion gone out and looked at other communities to see what their fee schedule is and try to make sure we're not out of line or way under. So I didn't know if it was worthy or if we've done that recently or if we should be looking at that.
I am considering revising the fee schedule. It's cumbersome the way it was set up originally, and it could be streamlined a little bit. Some stuff could probably be eliminated. I know I've also talked with the fire department. We're bringing in the permit fees for sprinklers and fire alarms when they're doing all the plan review and all the inspections for stuff like that. So there is going to be some research done on that, and we'll hopefully get this streamlined. And if other communities are beginning to up their permit fees a little bit, we'll entertain that. Not a problem.
One of the problems with that is currently, and we'll be talking about this more in the next couple of weeks, I have a builder who's come to us that owns a lot of lots out in Deer Hills, in the preserve area, that wants us to cut our fees and not charge them connection costs and so forth. And that's just not realistic. You know, citizens as community and their tax money put the dollars in to run sewer and water and amenities out there. And I look at that just like they're investors in this corporation called the City of Belvidere, and it's time for them to earn. You know, everybody pays connection fees and so forth. The example is used in Poplar Grove, and Poplar Grove is allowing anybody to build anything up there now and not charging anything to do it. That's not the kind of growth that we want. We're looking at the lots in Deer Hills. Those are expensive homes. And having those homes built and collecting the appropriate fees for doing that is the right thing to do. We have more than 72% now of the housing in the City of Belvidere is by federal standards considered to be affordable housing. So we need to swing it the other way a little bit, and all of the money that was spent on development of subdivisions and on running the amenities out there, needs to be, we need to get that money back because we bonded out to get that money and put those in for people, and now it's, if they want to develop that, then they should pay just like everybody else did. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I was actually just checking, we did revise some of the building permit fees in 2011. So there was some work done in 2011. Again, that's quite a while ago already.
It's 9 years.
And it's a slippery slope when you're talking about, you want to encourage development too. So I know, especially with the building fees, that's been one that, we haven't wanted to touch just because even looking at it, I've looked at it before, even minor increases isn't going to make the community development department self-sufficient. So I think except for the year where we had the hail damage, it's pretty much reliant on the general fund revenues.
Anything else? Alderman Snow? Okay.
Page 4. We're at electrical certification fees. Page 5, there's an adjustment for the plumbing permits because by using the state for the inspectors. Oh, I'm sorry.
To ask on page 4, the electrician certification fees. Each person pays $50, so we currently have 60 people allowed to do electrical work in Boone County. Do they have to take a test? Is there a test that goes with that? How does that work?
They have to provide that they're licensed in another community, is all they need to do. And I have found in our ordinance that it was never approved by council to raise that rate to $50, so that'll be going back down to 25. Unless council would like to entertain that we approve it to be $50.
I think it's $50 everywhere else.
Well, I think we should re-examine and look at the surrounding area and what people are getting for what, and see where we have the ability to affect some things that are reasonable. I mean, you know, at least we'd be going backwards and not from 25 to 50, but if it's 50 everywhere else, and I haven't heard anybody really pitch a fit about paying the 50, so. Anything else? Alderman Freeman? Okay.
Page 6 is the Page 7 is projected plan review fees. Page 8 is the projected sidewalk and lot grading fees. It was previously handled by Public Works. I was the inspector for that when I was here previously, so I took it back.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
So out of curiosity, we went from not even $1,200 to $3,000 on the sidewalk. What was the rationale?
City clerk was collecting those fees. It wasn't in our budget last year. So I projected that we're going to increase that this year.
So you anticipate more sidewalk work being done that's going to stimulate that?
Correct.
Okay.
Page 9 is insulation permits. Page 10 is zoning review fees. It's pretty consistent with previous years. Looks like we left other permits around the same amount for income. Miscellaneous revenues, reinspection fees, and non-sufficient fund fees. Page 14 is expense reimbursement for planning for certified mailings.
Yes, George?
Can I go back for a minute, insulation? Do you, I know it wasn't before, but do you guys now make it code that you fill the garage ceilings if you have bedrooms up there? Because it wasn't code before in Belvidere.
If there is living space above the garage, they would have to insulate it to meet the energy code, yeah.
Because it wasn't in 2003. That's why I asked you if, because when I was talking to a guy, because mine wasn't, and I was talking to the insulation guy, he said, well, it's not code in Belvidere, but he did it anyway. But I was just curious if it is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Planning fees, use variances, zoning applications, et cetera. Page 16 would be miscellaneous planning revenue from zoning letters, map sales, plan sales. Move to expenses. First page is salaries.
Yes.
So there's an item here, the community development planner. Is that you, Gina? Yes. Okay. And then the GIS specialist, do we split that with the county for Grant, or we pay all of him?
Grant no longer works for the county.
Right, we pay all of him. So this is him averaging about 22 hours a week. And you will notice on here there is a new initiative regarding the administrative assistant. And I'm not sure if Kip wanted to talk about that now. We will talk about salaries again when we discuss personnel at your next meeting.
But we got rid of our chief building inspector, and we just added a part-time building inspector, right?
Well, it's a change in terminology.
Right.
Chief building inspector was Lisa. So Kip is the director, the building director, so.
But
Oh,
it's a
we-
change in
So it's just a different
terminology.
title?
That's why
Okay.
there's a zero.
No, we did go from 2 full-time to 1 full-time part-time, though, as well as far as staff in that department goes.
The
And I think
bill,
it's appropriate at this point, and we'll talk about this again when we present salaries. The City of Belvidere has been limping along, underpaying its employees and working with too few employees for a decade. And it's cost us in some areas because we haven't been able to be as competitive as we'd like to be. And so we've tried to find ways to save money. And to me, the most important thing we have, asset we have in the city are the people who work for us. And we've had extraordinary loyalty from the people in this community to the people who work here and vice versa. And it's getting harder all the time because people look at how green the grass is on the other side. We've recently, as you know, we've lost firefighters and police officers who go east to DuPage County and get paid another $10,000 or $15,000 a year over what we're able to afford. So across the board, we have asked for minimal wages for our employees every year, and we have certain instances where we have employees that have not had substantial raises in a number of years. And I think we need to now take a real look, and that goes right back to revenue. And we consistently vote down a levy increase, even a small one, even when we hold it to the tax caps. What we're doing is, it's a recipe for disaster. Less revenue, more cost, no raises for employees, having to patch together trucks and equipment. Now, this year, because we planned well 3-4 years ago in the capital funds for the fire department to go to this new hybrid engine, we're able to afford that. But everything that they ask for, we've planned for years. And if we had a severe dip in revenues from the city, I mean, we'd be in serious trouble. So if there's another recession that sets us back, I don't know how we can go backwards. I mean, we're probably 12 employees down from what we were across the board in 2007. So, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
Thank you. So the building inspector was full-time and now it's a part-time, one line item on there. So really, and then Kathy got a certification as a permit technician. So I asked that her pay get a little bump for that. So if you compare by adding grant, we only went up about $9,000 in salaries for the proposed by cutting that full-time inspector, bringing in a part-time, pretty qualified retired firefighter that's assisted the building department for years and inspections and stuff. So I think it's a good switch, and I think we can make it work. Any questions? Page 3 is FICA. Page 4 is IMRF. Page 5 is health insurance expenses. Page 6 is dental insurance. Page 7 is training. It's increased a little bit. I haven't tried to encourage staff to justify a jump in the pay. Page 8 is repair maintenance equipment. That actually went down a little bit. Page 9 is repair maintenance for vehicles. Adding another staff. We're driving a, I don't know what year that truck is. 98? What's that? The purple truck. So, or maybe tires might come about this year or something, so I'd put a little bit more in there for that. Page 10 is professional services.
Donna?
Yes, Marcia.
So, we don't employ an actual electric or plumbing inspector, not even part-time. So these guys, are they just on call? Are they paid per call? Are they paid per hour when they go out on a call? How are they paid?
The electrical inspector is paid salary. The state does not charge for inspections for the plumbing. So, and usually Gail works in the morning, Monday through Friday. Greg will work Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. the state's on a hiatus, they only get 4 days. I've left the salary of the plumbing inspector in there because there's 2 state inspectors. They cover a territory from Marengo to Galena. One of them's getting ready to retire. It's impossible for them to be able to cover that territory and still give us the services that we want. Now they've just picked up the county. So I'm asking that we leave that in there. I've been talking to people trying to get a licensed plumbing inspector back on staff. It's probably a service that the city should provide. Page 11 is telephones. Page 12 is for postage. Page 13 is for printing publications. Page 14 is contractual services for the GIS. Page 15 is office supplies for planning, building, and now GIS department. Page 16 is gas and oil. And finally, page 17 is miscellaneous expenses.
Your Honor.
Yes.
So when it
Alderman
comes,
Snow.
when it comes to the GIS, so where are we standing? Because I remember it seemed like there was somewhat of an issue with the county accessing and divvying up who was getting what or hardware and things like that. So I was curious as to what the logistics were there lately, in case it comes up.
Just turn it off. We're working on the agreement right now with the city attorney and with the state's attorney on a new intergovernmental agreement regarding the GIS. The biggest cost that you see that we have in our budget is the ArcGIS server license, and a couple other, and the individual license on people's computers. So that's the biggest part that we need to make sure we have access to.
It's all wheels in motion, but there's no big hiccups at this point.
Correct.
Yes, Alderman Revelo.
Could we somehow put in the permits and fees we collect, like the dollar amount, like at least a footnote, so at least we know how much we're collecting? Like a permit costs maybe $50, like for each fee collect.
Oh.
Electric permits,
Sure.
building
That-
permits, and the plan reviews, if that's even possible.
I can get you a copy of the fee schedule if you want.
Okay, thank
And
you.
also, every month in your packets, you'll get a revenues generated for that month. It'll itemize out what fees, or what permits were issued and what fees have been charged for that.
Marcia?
So now that we've gone through your whole budget, I want to go back to page 1. And under other professional services, we have budgeted 49,000 or $47,000. Can you, what are other services?
Believe part of that is the plumbing inspector.
Yeah, that's your plumbing inspector, the electrical inspector, and then also the iWorks, which is the computer program that runs the building department software.
Yes, Alderman Frank.
Kip, I have a question about your accomplishments, the handout that you gave. It says that you serve as a planning consultant for the Village of Poplar Grove.
Yep.
How often do you do that, and how do they pay you for that?
Gina?
That's actually me. Yep. So I am a contract employee for the Village of Poplar Grove. That started, Oh, probably in about 2010-ish, when we were still in the recession, looking for revenues, the department went out to try to find new revenue sources to help our budget. Poplar Grove at that point was looking for a planner but could not afford one, so we worked out a compromise. So I processed all of their zoning requests, text amendments, variances, special uses. I actually just met with a business owner in Poplar Grove today about a special use they're going to be applying for. I go to their plan commission meetings. I do not go to their committee of the whole and village board because they're the same nights as here, which is why sometimes you'll see me on my phone because I'm actually answering questions for them. I answer phone calls, like if someone calls, sorry, the village wanting an address, a zoning letter, some kind of verification, it gets transferred to me and I answer it. Emails get forwarded to me and I answer them. I keep track of what I'm doing to the best as I can because, you know, how do you time an email kind of stuff. And I send them a monthly invoice based on the hours that I believe I worked for them. I'm usually pretty considerate, like I've never overcharged them. If anything, I'm usually under just to be on the safe side. And they send a check to the city for reimbursement of what my hourly wage is. So I make no additional money and the city gets reimbursed for what they were paying me. That is why under planning miscellaneous, even though we're budgeted about 900, in past years it's been about 1,400. Because the Poplar Grove reimbursement gets put in that line item. It's kind of a month-to-month agreement we have with them. So I never want to budget $5,000 assuming where maybe next month they decide, oh, here's the time we change things up. Or I get so busy in Belvidere with all the stuff going on in Belvidere plus the additional job duties I've gathered over the years, I can't work for them anymore. So I always keep that line item low and pleasant surprise at the end of the year when it's higher.
Good enough? Do you have another question, Alderman Frank? Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about the community development budget? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which brings us to Public Works unfinished business. There are none. On Public Works new business, we got a bunch. Item A is proposed 2020 MFT street maintenance program. Director Anderson.
Okay, in the packet again tonight, and this was brought up at last month's Public Works meeting, so hopefully you've had time to go over it. This is our proposed list for overlays for this year. Good news is there's additional revenues that the city is seeing from the state's increase in the gas tax. We do get a percentage of that. And as such, the projected budget we have for our MFT overlay program is $935,000 this year. And that list of streets in the memo is what that $935,000 represents. So I would look for a motion to approve the 2020 MFT street maintenance overlays.
Entertain a motion to approve. Alderman Snow.
I'll second it.
Second, Alderman Crawford. Questions, comments, further discussion concerning the motion now on the floor? Yes, Alderman Porter.
I'm just curious, hey Brent, how long does the overlay normally last on a side street and say a more used street like 6th Street?
We hope to get 10 to 12 years on an overlay, just because of what our funding levels have been. Ideally, we're probably looking more like 5 to 7. So we are going to be playing catch up here for quite a while, but now that we have the additional revenue through the state MFT, and plus we have our local motor fuel tax as well, that doesn't represent any of that dollars in this proposed list. So hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to catch up on our overlays.
Yes, Alderman Frank.
Brent, are we still doing Logan Avenue?
Logan Avenue, we can talk about when we go through the budget process. Right now, we're currently working on on the behind the scenes, if you will, for Logan Avenue, some right-of-way acquisitions, utility adjustments. We're actually, looks like we're going to apply perhaps for some grant funding to pay a portion of it. The anticipated construction of Logan at the earliest will be next fiscal year, next summer, so it'll be 2021.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the MFT maintenance program? All those in favor of approval, motion now on the floor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds unanimous to me. Next up, under B, we have the wastewater treatment plant sluice gate replacement bid tabulation. Director Anderson?
We recently opened the bids for this project. This is to replace 5 sluice gates in the main equipment building at our wastewater treatment plant. We received 3 bids back, the low bid being from Leander Construction Company in the amount of $214,700. The engineer's estimate for this project was $225,000. And this project, if you recall, it was taken out of the overall digester rehab, main equipment building updates that we were going to use with the IEPA loan program. However, since we got that program kicked back at least a year, we felt it was prudent. We really needed to move forward on the gate replacement, so we broke that up as a separate project, and that's what you have before you tonight. I would recommend approval of the low bid from Leander Construction in the amount of $214,700 for the wastewater treatment plant gate replacement project, and this work will be paid for from our depreciation funds.
Motion to approve. Motion by Alderman Porter, second. Alderman Snow. Questions, comments, further discussion? Alderman Snow.
So Brent, I'm just curious if you had any, why the third bid was more than double the other 2 people offhand.
As you know, when we do bids, they come in all shapes and sizes, and they can be. It probably reflects perhaps the amount of work they already have under contract, so that if they got the bid, they would know they would be making the appropriate monies. I think the guy that delivered the bid said, well, by God, we'd do twice as good as work as the other 2 guys, is what his comment was.
Yes, Alderman Frank.
Maybe this is for Becky or Brent. How do we pay that all at once when it's completed?
Typically, when we have the projects like this, there'll be extended periods of time for the work to be done. In this case, it's a long period, but it's a long period, but a short works time, because what they have to do is they'll come in, they'll isolate the flow. They basically have to bypass pump the flow coming into the plant, and then they need to take the measurements and everything of the existing gates and the existing conditions. Then they have to order those gates. Those gates have to be manufactured specifically for our application, which takes time. And then once they come back in over that time period, then they'll be back out, and it'll take them probably less than 2 weeks to actually get the work done. So the project could take 6 months or 8 months overall, but most of that time is going to be in the design and manufacturing of the replacement gates. But yes, we pay for it usually in monthly or installments, usually as they're billed. Sometimes lump sum, all depends on how it works.
Yes, Alderman Freeman.
And this includes the removal and haul away of the old ones, right?
Yes.
Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next up under C, we have wastewater treatment plant sluice gate replacement, the engineering services portion of the bids.
Correct memo in your packet. Attached to the memo is the proposed work order from Baxter and Woodman for the construction services required for this project. And their proposal is not to exceed cost of $18,900. That represents an 8.8% of the awarded contract cost. I would recommend approval of the construction services work order from Baxter and Woodman in the amount not to exceed $18,900 for the sluice gate replacement project at the wastewater treatment plant. And this work will be paid for again from the sewer depreciation fund.
May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Alderman Crawford, may I have a second, please? Alderman Porter. Questions or comments? Alderman Freeman, then Alderman Snow. Alderman Freeman.
So our original budget for this was 225,
For the construction portion.
only the construction portion, because I was going to say, then, does this put us over at 233?
No, it's, the 225 was just for the the construction bid price.
Additional questions?
And what this will do, will change is, and when we go through the budget process, I'll touch on it a little bit, but the original estimate for the digester rehab and the main equipment building was 4.7 million. So I left it at this point in time, because I didn't have these bids back, I left it at the 4.7 million. So that number will change. The cost of this will be taken off of that estimate, be reduced.
Alderman Snow?
And Brent, a project like this, you usually go out to bid, you get engineering services to create the bid documents. Was that done by Baxter and Woodman?
That's correct. That work has already been done.
Additional questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Forward to City Council, final disposition. Under item D, we have the tree ordinance update. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Memo in your packet, along with the draft version of the updates to the tree ordinance. Our urban and community forestry grant that the city has recently received. Part of those requirements is that we have to have an updated tree preservation code, a tree ordinance. So what you have before you tonight is a blending of their proposed draft ordinance. They have 3 levels. They call it the bronze, silver, and gold editions of their tree preservation ordinance. So I took the bronze, their bronze model, and applied it to our existing tree ordinance, and it's a combination of both. And I would recommend that the revisions to Article 2 of Section 118 of the ordinance code be approved and refer them to the city attorney for drafting of an ordinance, which will require first and second reading. I sent this draft to our grant administrator as well for their review and approval. I haven't heard back from them. In fact, I'm meeting with them tomorrow here on site. So if there are any changes, we can do that through the ordinance process.
You want a motion to accept your proposal?
I would get a motion to approve the revisions and forward them to the city attorney for drafting of an ordinance.
May I have a motion?
I'll
Alderman
make that
Crawford,
motion.
may I have a second? Alderman Revelo. Questions or comments? Alderman Snow. And then Alderman Freeman.
So if we go back a couple pages, the pages aren't numbered, so I couldn't tell you what one, but at the top it says invasive species control. And down toward the bottom, it talks about private property owner outreach. The city shall adopt an outreach plan to educate property owners of the potential impact and mediation strategies to help property owners dealing with pests and pathogens. So I guess this kind of ties in with the fact that maybe we would try to do something about notifying all the people with the dead ash trees, to let them know to potentially take them down.
Director Anderson?
And that would probably come more under the hazardous section as opposed to the invasive species, but you are correct. There's provisions in there for hazardous trees and notifications as well. And we already have those provisions in our ordinance code for the hazardous conditions or the dead trees as far as that goes. As far as invasive species, that's ever evolving, ever changing. In fact, believe it or not, pear trees, the ornamental pear trees that a lot of residents like and a lot of residents have planted in this community as well as all over. The U.S. Forest Service is going to be listing that as an invasive species, which has caused, that's one of the reasons why we're getting a site visit tomorrow, because we had, in our grant application, we had 6 pear trees included in our planting program, and we were advised that we no longer can have those, so we got to make some changes there. But that, as far as the notifications and stuff, a lot of that material will be generated already by either State Department of Natural Resources or the Federals, the U.S. Forest Service, and we'll just be the clearinghouse for that to provide for our residents, which we already maintain with the kiosks that we have at the front of the office here.
Alderman Frank?
So Brent, we don't have anybody that works for us now that does the coding or the violations. You said that's by the state and the natural resources, like the last page of the penalties?
The last page of penalties, that's in the existing code already.
Okay, but that doesn't fall on Kara?
It would fall on either the Public Works Department, yes, or the property manager, correct. That's already provisions that are already in your current code.
You will remember that the last 3 years, we've spent $300,000 on removing how many trees?
Close to 400 ash trees.
Alderman Freeman?
So, couple things. As far as like the distance of these trees, like stuff that's already here, it says no tree shall be planted closer than 35 feet of any street corner. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of trees and bushes and shrubs and way closer than that, because when you pull up to the white line at most intersections in Belvidere, you have to then pull up way farther just to be able to see. Are those going to be grandfathered in, or are those going to have to be trimmed up, taken out? How's that going to?
Yes, yes, and yes. They'll be grandfathered in as well as they can be. They may have to be trimmed up to facilitate better sight distance, or they may have to be trimmed down depending on what the species are, what the variety is. Or if in the worst case scenario, yes, it would have to be removed.
Be on a
But
complaint
the
basis.
intent would be just if they've been there to allow them to be there until they're no longer.
We already do have provisions on current code that allows us to regulate the blocking of sight lines to some extent.
Any other questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved and forwarded to City Council for final disposition. Next up, we have the Public Works budget presentation. Director Anderson.
Where do you want to start, Brent?
Well, I apologize for the length, but bear with me. It's a matter of how many pages we got in the budget to go through. So we've got, and in that light, we've got about 150 pages here to go through. So I will try to be expeditious as possible. If you have questions, holler at me. A lot of it, the budget numbers have stayed the same from year over year for at least what's being proposed. So I won't be planning to spending a lot of time on those unless you guys have questions. Is this one on here? Okay. All right, let's start with the Engineering and Street Department General Fund. Page 1 of 24. Overall budget, if you look at for the street department, which includes the engineering portion as well, it's a 4.21% increase for this year. I like numbers. I like facts and numbers. Just a little information from fiscal year 9 to fiscal year 19, that 10-year period. The street department budget has gone up 14% total, or average of 1.4% per year. In that same time period, the consumer price index has gone up 20.3%, and the construction cost index, which is what we use in the construction industry, that's what we tie our recapture fees and things to, that index has gone up 32%. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of keeping our expenses in line. That being said, let's go to page 2 of 24. Yes, Marcia?
Okay, Brent, so I went through this whole, your street, your water, your sewer. Engineering services I couldn't find any in any of the other budgets for engineering, and we pay boatloads of money for engineering services, CES, Baxter Woodman. Where else, you have $27,000 for that. Where else are engineering services in all these budgets?
They're included in each of the ones, so when I go with each line item, each of the budgets, we can touch on that.
Okay. The other thing, the leaf cleanup and recovery?
Yes?
I thought we did that in-house.
We do that in-house, but when we acquire a big enough pile of debris, two things. Branches, in a branch collection program that we do twice a year. We have that ground when the pile gets sufficient enough that we basically run out of space. So we have that ground, and that cost is anywhere from 10 to 15,000 depending on the size of the pile. So that's the bulk of that cost. We also land apply our leaves. For the most part, we are able to either include those leaves mix it in with the branch grinding as part of that mulch, or we have found homes for some area farmers, some area nurseries that will take the leaves that we haul and dispose of that way. So there's a little bit of cost. We have some, newspaper notifications when we have to put the map stuff in the thing, that all comes out of there.
Right, I was just noticing that it's typically, it was 13, 14, it was pretty low, and then 15, it went real low, and then it went up to 14, 10, 9, and then actual fiscal year 19, it went all the way down to $912.
Because we again, that is basically weather dependent, so, and that's more the branches dictate that expense more than anything else. That's our single biggest expense. So if we don't have any storm damage for the year, it makes a big difference. So we're able to basically store that pile, carry that over to the next fiscal year, if we can. Lately, probably in the last 10 years, we've been averaging once a year we grind, but there's a few times that we've been able to carry it over. So, engineering services, page 2 of 24, that 27,000. Again, there's breakdowns in there, master plan for basin mappings, site review fees, and professional fees consulting. As we have oddball projects come up, we utilize outside services for that, and that's what that represents. Again, that's the same as what it was last year. Engineering cost subdivision expenses, that's a plug number. It's basically what it is, and those, if we do have any of those expenses in any given year, those are usually typically paid for by the developer. Office supplies, same as last year. And that's the engineering portion. Then you get into the street department, individual line items. First up is salaries, represents the 2.5% increase. That's per the contract. Just
Yeah.
You don't have a new initiative as to hire a new street employee?
no new initiatives this year.
No revenue.
Overtime, page 6 of 24. I did bump that up a little bit. As you can see, if you look at the 5-year average, we're trending a little bit higher than 40. And again, that's all weather dependent for Public Works, and our overtime budget is Mother Nature. The more it snows, the more storms we have, the more flooding events we have. Those are the activities that typically take our call-out time and our overtime spent.
Yesterday was a real good example. It was Sunday.
Yes, whenever we get these once-a-week snows or these little snows, they might be little, but when they happen on Sunday, it's double time. So it adds up. Instead of happening at Monday or Tuesday at 10 a.m. Page 7 of 24, health insurance. We basically don't have much control on that. 8 of 24, uniform allowance, same as last year. Our training budget, page 9 of 24, is again $1,500, which is the same as last year. Storm drain repair and maintenance, the budget again $30,000, again same as last year. This will be, remember we talked about initiative as perhaps establishing a stormwater utility, which that presentation, that work is basically done. The draft has been submitted to us, to the staff for our review. We'll be meeting with Fairgraham to go over that report here towards the end of this month, and they will be making a presentation at our March Public Works meeting for where that's at. But again, it's $30,000 right now in our street department budget, which is the same as what it was last year. Page 11 of 24, street parking lot, $97,500. It's a slight increase over years previous. And again, if you look at the FY18 and FY19 actual expenses, and if you look at this year's actual expenses, we've exceeded that.
Right.
Yes.
Where are we on the one on Lincoln Avenue, on that parking lot? Are they done with are they completed with the,
We'll be looking at when we get a little bit farther here, we'll get the capital projects to be in there. No, there's a budget number plugged into the budget under the capital expenses for improvements. There's some street lighting that we want to do there. There's a little bit of paving we want to do there. There's some striping that needs to be done, and just a little bit of landscaping as well. But we'll get to that here when we get a few more pages back. Page 12 of 24, sidewalks, curb and gutter, it's 40,000, same as last year, with the breakdown as shown there between the sidewalk program and the curb and gutter. Brick repairs, we no longer have those, of course, because we've got the stamped concrete now. And then the ADA sidewalks. And ADA sidewalks, that's a portion of the 10,000. The public benefit pays the remainder of that, and those are, again, required for any street that we use state or federal funds, so MFT funds, for example. On those projects, we have to do ADA compliant corners, sidewalk returns on all intersections.
Alderman Freeman?
So curb and gutter, $10,000 budgeted. There's a large portion of Belvidere that has no curbs and gutters. Are we actively putting curbs and gutters in places that have none?
Unfortunately, no. That $10,000 represents basically remove and replace repair of existing curb and gutter. Typically, right now, policy for the city is if a homeowner is interested in having curb and gutter, the initial cost for that installation is borne by the homeowner. The city will pay then to extend the street over to that new curb and gutter alignment, because typically that's a widening of the existing roadway. So the city pays for that. It would certainly be the goal when we do the road reconstruction programs to add that curb and gutter when we get to there, such as probably in the top 3 on our road reconstruction list would be West Harrison Street, for example, and that would be, when that is done, it'll have curb and gutter, new sidewalks, new everything, basically, between right-of-way to right-of-way. Page 13 of 24, repair building maintenance. It's 10,000 this year, 97 last year. I just rounded it up to make it an even number, to be honest with you. Equipment repairs and maintenance, it's 110,000, which is again the same as what it was last year. Traffic signals, page 15 of 24. It's 30,000 this year, same as last year. Telephone utilities, it's marked up from 7,000 to 8,000 this year. And again, if you look at the last 17, 18, and 19 averages, we're around a little bit more than 7,000. 17 to 24, the leaf cleanup and removal, we've already talked about that. 12,000, same as last year's budget. Page 18, office supplies, 6,000, the same as last year. Same with page 19, gas and oil, 75,000, which is the same as last year. Operating supplies, last year was 25,000. I'm proposing an increase to 30,000. Again, based on our 5-year average. And we've got the one additional employee now, which allows us hopefully to get that much more work done, such that we need more supplies to keep them busy. Page 21 of 24, miscellaneous expenses, 2,000, same as what it was budgeted last year. The equipment, no longer, we don't use that line item anymore for equipment, which brings us to the repairs, maintenance, streetlights. Page 23, and you'll notice the budget's gone from 40,000 to 30,000. We could probably take it down some more in the near future, as most of our lighting that we have has been converted to LED. As far as streetlights go, all of our own streetlights have been converted to LED, as well as ComEd has completed their conversion of LED streetlights for the overheads. They still have to convert their ornamental style lighting that they own. Our ornamental style has been converted. And we're in the process now of going through all of our public works facilities, changing all the interior lighting over to LED. I just met with ComEd this last week, did an inventory of the buildings where we haven't yet, such as City Hall. So they have a new program now where they'll come in and do the inventory of what we have, and they will furnish the light fixtures, the LED light replacement fixtures, and then we have to install them. So we're working on that now for the remaining buildings. We have some at the wastewater treatment plant, some here at the City Hall's one. We have a couple at the water department. Most of the street department has been done already, and that includes all of our well houses as well. Street lighting and electricity, page 24 to 24. You see it's a reduction from 240 to 230,000. Hopefully, and you see where we were up to 285, almost 290, up in that 290 to 250 range, 270. ComEd has indicated that their estimate for savings for us with the LED conversion being complete is about $40,000 a year, hopefully, which represents that reduction to 230. So hopefully going forward, we'll be able to reduce that even further. We'll see how that goes with the LED lights. Which brings us to our capital expense. And as we talked previously, we flip-flopped. We did have the snow blower in our current budget. However, based on some sizing and looking at what's out there, we felt it was more prudent to go with a larger snow blower than the one that we have existing. So we flip-flopped the leaf vacuum with the snow blower. So 2021 proposed is a snow blower at $160,000 for that snow blower. As far as the, you can see the list of the vehicles there going forward. Infrastructure needs for 2021, we've got plugged in the Poplar Grove Lawrenceville Road intersection improvement. That $35,000 represents the city's share, and that is what is left. The remainder of the expense, we have received 2 grants, state grants, to pay for a portion of that cost. Total cost is about $140,000, and we've got about $100,000 of grants to pay for that portion. Parking lot 5 rehab is the one kitty corner across the old Oktoberfest lot from us. It's needed work for a long time, but we've held off because of A, the train station, and B, because of coal and iron and what that might mean. In looking at it, we look like we can do an improvement there and still accommodate what coal and iron will be doing, or what the new container park will be doing, as well as leaving provisions for if and when train station would ever come back to the commuters would come back to rail would come back to Belvidere. So that is being worked on. So if that is included and approved as part of the budget, then you'll be seeing some design work, concept plans to come before you to proceed with that. Parking lot 7 addition, we touched on that. That budget that I've got plugged in is $10,000 to do that additional lighting that we need, as well as the little bit of paving that we would do in-house, striping that we would do in-house, and the landscaping we do in-house as well. Now, not on this list is the things that are carryovers, what I'll call carryovers from previous. We've still got the ponds to do, the high school ponds to do. We've still got the low flow channel to do. That work is in progress. We've still got the brownfield cap that we have to work on. That grant has been unfrozen down at the Leith property. The Leith property work and the ponds are kind of commingled, tied together, because the plan is to be able to take the spoil from the ponds when we make the high school pond deeper and to hold more water, and we create the new pond on Bellwood. We can take that spoil and take it to the Leith property and use that as the cap to cap that we're required to do by EPA. So that's where that's at. We're working on getting that fine-tuned, so hopefully work on that will begin soon. And if it does, you'll be made apprised of that. And we're still working on wetland mitigation for the low flow channel on 6th Street. We should be getting real close on that as far as what steps we're going to have to follow, or we may be creating some additional wetland areas on some other city-owned property, or perhaps some conservation district-owned property, in order to satisfy those requirements on that project. So that's where those are at. Also included on that list, the Harrison reconstruction that we touched on, the Logan Avenue improvements are still there, being plugged in for 2022. We've got the Newburgh and Irene intersection that's been talked about in the past, the Appleton Road widening project. I have not put any numbers dates, years on those, because that's going to be a conversation that we need to have and decide how we're going to go move forward with those projects and funding, and how the funding is going to be done and what method. So we will talk about that further at that point in time. As far as the storm sewer goes, the stormwater utility, again, we're going to be talking about that at our next month's meeting. The Fifth Avenue detention, which includes a 72-inch bypass storm sewer, as well as the street reconstruction, that $4.6 million. That is an important project. Fifth Avenue by Washington School is getting really bad. It really needs to have work done, which is the proposed route for this storm sewer overflow. Right now, we are working on, we've got the appraisal, the council has approved the appraisal on the property where that outlet would be going from underneath the road to the river on that property. That's been completed. We're working on, we have an easement across from the railroad to get to that piece of property. We're now working on with the railroad to get easements in place to allow that storm sewer to be placed underneath their right-of-way. And we've also talked to Franklin Wire about the possibility of the pond being located on their property, as well as easements for the storm sewer. They've indicated that they are willing to give us the easements on the storm sewer, and we're still working with them on the pond design. And the pond design is kind of tied to what the railroad will allow us to do or not allow us to do. So there's some work there that we're still doing, but that's where those are at this point in time. Okay, that's all I got for street department, unless there's questions.
Questions concerning the street department presentation? George, you have something? Do you have a question? No. Okay. Thanks. Anybody else?
All right, moving right along. Next up, motor fuel tax. Where's that at? That should be by itself.
It's towards the back of your book. Should be
And I
an MFT
apologize
tab.
because I keep this in my general funds before I get to water and sewer. So. It's a one-pager. It's a one-pager. We like one-pagers. And it basically gives you the outline of the cash balance that we have, what our allotments are going to be. And there's where you'll see that transportation tax, that $420,000. That's the additional revenues being generated by that state increase in the gas tax. As well as we're still getting some high growth, right, Becky? We still get high growth payments?
Correct.
That 28,519, we still are receiving that one-time payment. So you can see our street maintenance work is $260,000, which includes $250,000 for rock salt and $10,000 for patch mix. And then our contracted work, and that's where you'll see the $935,000 for the overlays that we talked about earlier tonight, as well as $20,000 for striping. And keep in mind also that the $20,000 of striping there is for basically the thermoplastic striping that we use on our new overlay streets. We've been, for the last several years, we've been co-oping with City of Rockford and Cherry Valley combined for our paint striping work, and we pay for that out of public benefit funds. Any questions?
Yes, Marcia.
So I guess my question on this would be for Becky. I don't know, I look at my IML review when I get it. And in this month's February issue, they kind of give like a little bit of a table breakdown of municipalities' share of state funds. So is it, when you figure the motor fuel tax fund, do you figure in our share of the TRF too with that? Or, you know, municipal share from the MFT is like $24.30 per capita.
Right.
And then this one, the TRF is like $11.45 per capita. And then I'm not sure if, do we share, we also share the Illinois use tax? So,
Yeah, The magazine that you're looking at, I rely on that to help me do the budget. So does everybody across the state. Most municipalities that have the May 1, that's why they get that out right now, is to help us, because I rely on a lot of those numbers when I'm plugging them into the budget. Yep, so it's
So
very
these
good.
these numbers are on this motor fuel tax page, for the most part?
Correct. I mean, Brent and I go through those together. Sometimes that article, that information will let us know if the state's going to do a sweep. There's a few years ago when times were still really bad and there wasn't a budget. They call it a sweep, or they basically will come in and take out some of those funds. So that's a polite way of them saying that they're going to take some of our money.
Basically, what I do is I yell at Becky and say, I need more money, and she says, no, you can't, and she gets that magazine out and says, see right here.
It seems like this one is some good news,
Mhm.
actually. Stuff is going
The
up.
trend is up for this year.
And the trend is up, yep. I had to do a little cost analysis myself on a couple of them, just to make sure it was, I wasn't putting in the wrong calculation, because they were going up a little bit. The motor fuel tends to stay about the same. Like I said, the best news for us is the transportation tax, which definitely helps us. That's about $38,000 a month, an additional revenue that we receive right now. So.
Which is why it pays to have a great relationship with the IML.
All right, next up, let's go do landfills. Page 50 of 64. And again, most of this is dictated through the county. They basically provide the estimate of what it's going to cost for our share of landfill number 2. Landfill number 1 is pretty much to the point of where it's going to be from now to eternity. It's been delisted. We still have to mow it on an annual basis. We still have to sample it on an annual basis, and that's probably not going to change, with the exception of if they do the solar power generation on the site, which is still a possibility. If that comes to fruition, then as part of that contract, they will be responsible for the mowing and stuff, so we will no longer have to do at least that. But we still have to do the annual sampling.
Yes, Marcia?
So I had a question on page 49 of 63, I guess. I was a little bit confused under the heading revenues, $50,000. What kind of revenues do we get from our landfill?
That is actually through the property. Oops, I keep turning it off. I keep wanting to poke the button. That is property tax. We levy the $50,000 a year for the landfill.
Which is garbage, basically, right?
Yeah.
Garbage. It's actually, if you look at the revenue, it's the garbage. It's
Oh, the property tax, right.
Yeah. Okay, no questions there. Let's go to page 52, trees, forestry. The good news is we're getting down back to what I'll say normal conditions, which was $40,000, which before the Emerald Ash Borer came to town, that's what our budget had been averaging on an annual basis, and we're now back to that now. And so hopefully we will be doing less removals, but I left it at 40,000 because if we can balance it out, but we can do some tree planting as well, and we'll use this line item to do that. So we will hopefully be able to take advantage of that depending on how our budgets are going and looking in any given year's time frame, to the intent that what we don't spend on removing will be spent on replacing some of our tree canopy. No questions? Let's go to Special Service Area 2 and 3, which was on your desk tonight. And these are basically what we refer to as the Farmington Ponds, a series of ponds, wet ponds that were constructed as part of the development out there. The city is charged with maintaining those, and it's a separate service area fee that is applied to residents in those subdivisions out there for those ponds. And this is the revenue and expenses that we have in the annual maintenance. which, again, that'll be coming up at your March Public Works meeting, the annual contract for the pond maintenance. All right, no questions there. We can go and move on to water and sewer. So we'll start off, we'll go water first.
Yep.
And this is bad. This is the only bad spot in the whole budget. And it's not really bad, it's just time. But when I say bad, if you look at and she did it in red, so it was stand out for everybody.
Yeah, well,
Come on, put it back where it was.
it goes blue sometimes.
We can't ignore it. There you go. So, based on my budgeted revenues and budget expenses, we're at a $18,059 deficit. I guess start with on the water rates. You know, last time we had a water rate increase was December 6th of 2010. So we've gone a long time without it. We are fortunate enough here that we have the lowest rates in the immediate area. And in fact, we have probably one of the lowest water rates and sewer rates in the entire state. That's the good news. The bad news is it's come time, and you'll see as we go through each of the individual line items, not many changes, but we're seeing our water usage going down. A lot of that we can count towards the conservation measures that everybody is doing now in the plumbing systems and all the toilets and basically everything that's manufactured now has conservation front and center, and it's working. And I'll give you another example when things happen. When FCA went from 3 shifts to 2 shifts, I'm projecting that's probably a $100,000 hit in water revenue on us when that happens. So as those things come in, as those ebb and flows take place and those changes happen, that's what we're seeing. But I can give you an example. Our peak water usage as far as pumping that we actually pump out of the ground was in 2005. It was 1.4 billion gallons of water that we pumped out that year out of the ground. In 2019, we pumped 957 million gallons. So that's about a 31% decline in water pumpage from 2005 at our peak to 2019. So as you look at the revenues, again on that first page, let's go to page 2 of 8. And then you can see what the water consumption, and that represents the revenues that we've received for that water consumption and what's transpired throughout the time. So you can see I'm projecting about $100,000 less revenue than the previous year. No questions on page 3 then. The deposits on agreement. And those are just, again, that's an estimated, that's whenever we get reimbursed for existing facilities that we have previously paid for, and when people connect or hook up to it, they pay us back, basically. Meters sold, as you know, we have a annual meter maintenance fee, and that's what those numbers represent. The 85,000, that represents the water portion. It's a 50-50 split between water and sewer. Other services on page 5 is estimated to be 6,500. And we tend to be conservative on all these numbers. And that's basically the non-NSF funds, turn-on fees. And again, that represents a 5-year average is what we usually try to apply there. And then we have interest on page 6 of 8. Miscellaneous revenues, that's really for odd occurrences, such as the one that's listed there, was when we had an insurance settlement on well 7, for example. And then you'll notice in operating on page 8 of 8, we have a transfer in from connection fees to pay for the risk and resiliency assessment and emergency response plan. It's a new mandatory requirement from the US EPA that is going to be implemented, that every water utility in the state has to do. And the estimated cost for that, it again is $52,500. So you will be seeing that through committee and council. I'll be bringing a proposal for that after May 1 to begin that process. That's on the revenue side. We go to the expense side. And we'll just, the total listing there, let's see, what numbers can I throw out at you for the water side? Again, our water revenues, again, for a 10-year, like I did for the street, water revenues from 2009 to 2019 has had an 8.6% decrease. Our water expenses, 2009 to 2019, has only had a 1.8% increase. So we've been very, very diligent and able to control our expenses, basically a lot through modernization, computerization, and the benefits that provides to us. But like I said, we're to the point now that we're just going to have to buckle down and do a rate increase. As far as the rate increases go, for every penny on the water side that we increase, we generate about $10,000 in revenue. So that $18,000 shortfall would equate to a 2-cent increase on the water side. To give you a kind of a point of reference, when we did our last increase in 2010, that was proposed then to be a 28-cent rate increase to eliminate the deficit that was occurring at that point in time. And that was proposed to be done in 3 phases, 2 10-cent raises and an 8-cent raise. 2 of those 3 phases were approved and implemented, so we actually raised it 18 cents. That final 10 cents to go from $2.57 or from $1.57 to $1.67 was not implemented. Another footnote going forward, next year we've already got in place the employee contract, and that employee contract calls for a 3% salary increase. So that salary increase alone would cause us to require another 2-cent increase on the water rates. All right, with that being said, let's go to page 2 of 30, salaries. And you'll notice that the water salary's gone from $600,000 to $538, and you say, well, how can that be? We transferred 1 water employee on the water and sewer. We changed it over to the sewer side of the ledger, so that's where that savings arrived at. And that basically represents a more equal, as far as the time spent, work activities done. I felt that it was a more equitable split of that workload. So we've got theoretically one less water employee and put it on the sewer side. Page 3 of 30, the overtime, $35,000, same as last year. Again, it's weather dependent. Fortunately, this winter season has been kind to the water department, specifically because we haven't had the long cold snaps and stuff, and our main breaks, I don't know if knocking on pressed soybean works, but our main breaks have been down, so that's less overtime. FICA on the water side, that's out of our control. Same with IMRF, those are pages 4 and 5. Health insurance, again, it's basically out of our control, page 6 of 30. Uniform allowance, same as last year, page 7 of 30. Repairs and maintenance equipment, page 8 of 30, I bumped that up a little bit from $72,000 to $74,000.
Marcia?
So Brent, how many fire hydrants do we have, and how often do we have to replace those?
Most of the time, fire hydrants will last for a long time, and I say that probably 30, 40, 50, 60, I mean, they last a long time. And most frequently, they need to be replaced because they get hit, damaged in accidents, is what we see. Because for a lot of those hydrants, we can rebuild them, we can replace the innards, and they'll still suffice. How many we have? Oh, I don't know if I got my inventory with me on the stat sheet. I want to say it's about 2,300, 2,500. Don't quote me on that because I'd have to look on my sheet. I didn't bring that with me tonight. Page 9 of 30. Building maintenance grounds, 16,000, same as last year. Equipment wells, 33,000, again, same as last year. Vehicle repairs, 20,000, same as last year. Contractors, 85,000, same as last year. And this is where you will see on the next one, page 13 of 30, professional services, the addition there of the 52.5 for the emergency response plan that we have to do, which we touched on earlier with that transfer, and that's where that's going to be, that cost and expense will be offset. And that's a one-time plan that has to be done, and I'm sure they're going to require it to be updated on a periodical basis. I haven't heard yet what that schedule will be, but there will be some ongoing expense there over time. Telephone, page 14 of 30, 9,000, same as last year. Postage, 15 of 30, again 20,000, same as last year. Utilities, line item 16 of 30, 250,000. It's a reduction of 10,000 from last year. Hopefully, again, as we can get more efficiencies built into our system, redundancies done, that our utility usage will go down. Since well 10 has come online, it's helped. Some of the other improvements that we've done throughout the system have helped as well. So hopefully, we'll continue to see that go down. It's much more dramatic savings on the sewer side than on the water side, but there's still a little on the water side. Page 17 of 30, the office equipment, same as last year. Liability insurance, again, that's kind of out of our control. Although you'll see it's the same as last year, so that always sounds good when I can do that on liability insurance. Lab expense, testing on page 19 of 30 is 36,000, same as last year. That may be going up in the future. There's PFAS and PFOA are elements that are not currently being tested for, required by EPA. However, they are looking at doing that, and in fact, they will be, this spring, they're going to be going around sampling, taking samples from all utilities, water utilities providers in the state of Illinois. And then once we get the results of those samples, then we will respond accordingly. So that's going to take place sometime this spring. We were advised by IEPA, so we may be seeing something of that down the pike. Office supplies, page 20 of 30, 9,000, same as last year. Page 21 of 30, gas and oil, 20,000, same as last year. Operating supplies, bumped that up again from 65 to 67,000. Chemicals, yes.
Do you ever recycle some of these old parts that you don't use?
We recycle as much as we can.
Okay.
Yep. So all the copper, brass, anything that we have, metals, all of our departments recycle. Chemicals, page 23 of 30, same as last year, 90,000. Meters, 20,000 again in the budget. And that's probably going to be a constant going forward. We're almost completed with our change-out program. We no longer have a meter reader anymore. Any readings that we have to do from now on will be done in-house with our current employees. But as we get done with that phase, then we'll have to be going back to update the first phase that we did with the latest technology. So it's going to be an ever-evolving system. But that's worked out well for us. Bad debt expense, page 25 of 30 is 2,000, same as last year.
Quick question for you on the meters.
Yes.
So now the bulk of the city is now on the automated readings.
The bulk of the city is on the automated. We may have 1,000 out of the 7,200 accounts. We may have about 1,000 left. And those are the toughest ones, and I say the toughest because we basically have to get into the house and we actually rewire the whole thing and basically redo it from our end of it, the meter system. And it's not like the old days where access to the house was pretty easy because somebody was usually home with both parents working and schools and stuff. It's hard to get those scheduled and get that time in there where somebody's going to be home to let us in, or we even have to do it on the weekends. which we will do, whatever it takes basically to get that work done. So that part of it's taken longer, but yeah, the majority of the city is now done.
So with that, do we anticipate fewer issues with people having ongoing water running, broken pipes or whatever?
Yes, with the latest technology that we have available to us, we have a continuous usage report whenever we do it through the billing cycles now, that it will actually spit out and tell us when water's been running for a set period of time. And then we send notifications out to those property owners that it appears that water's running. So that's helped a lot. Another one of the coming down the pike is water meters with shut-off valves in the meter itself that can be controlled by the computer. So by changing our meters out to that style of system, then theoretically we won't, for doing shut-offs, turn-offs, if somebody calls in and says, hey, I got a water leak, I need my water off, all we'll have to do is press a button on the computer, basically a couple clicks, and we can shut the water off. Because of EPA regulations, it won't shut it off completely. It'll still let it trickle, but it's going to hard pressed to take a shower or actually use water and stuff. So we've got one installed right now in town as a test. We've been going through the software updates that are required to make that work, and that process is just about completed, where we're going to be able to test the test meter that we've got installed, and then we'll probably be purchasing some of those meters, more of those meters, to get our habitual shut-off list people that tend to be there on a regular basis, that will be able then to do that remotely through the computer. Page 26 of 30, miscellaneous expenses, 7,000, same as last year. Again, 27 of 30, the new equipment purchases, that's done in a different spot. Transfer outs, unfortunately on the water side, there's no transfer outs these days. I wish we had some, but not. Depreciation set aside, I bumped that up 10,000 this year. We try to keep up with that, at least at the running the cost of inflation. It's 344,000 this year, and again, that's what lets us do the bigger projects. Very important. It's just like in your own budget, your house. This is what you can put in your savings account, your rainy day funds for when things go bad. This is the money that lets us do our well repairs when we have to do that, our well rehabilitations, our bigger ticket projects. That's what funds those activities. And really good news, page 30 of 30, bond payment set aside, 0. We currently have no bonds outstanding to pay for, which is a very good thing. Which brings us to our capital schedule for the water side. So in 2021, you should see the risk and resiliency plan that we previously talked about for $52,500. And also for 2021, you see the Southwest tank repairs and painting. And they're finishing up the work on our assessments for our water storage facilities. And Southwest tank has been completed already. Their estimated cost to do that work is $440,000. So that's what we're proposing to do, again, in this upcoming fiscal year. And you can see our equipment and vehicles and the well 3 rehabs, well 5 rehabs, and how they're spaced out for over the next 5-year period.
Alderman Frank has a question. She wants to know where the water tower we're talking about is, or the tank.
The Southwest Tower is Newburgh Road.
The one that
It's
has
the one-
city
it's the one
murals on it?
that's- The city murals, and it's painted in the Belvidere high school colors, purple and gold, although you'd be hard pressed to see if that's a purple. It sure looks blue these days. But again, and we'll have that discussion here if we want to repaint that the same and just repaint it, or if you want something different, or how you want to approach that. But we'll be talking about that after May 1. All right, that's the water side. Now let's go into sewer. We'll start with the revenue side. Much better on the sewer side. Well, not much, but we're 16,000 to the good, so that's where we want to be at the end of the day for what we're proposing. Sewer revenues, again, just to give you an overview over a 10-year period from 2009 to 2019. We've had a 4.5% decrease in our revenues, but we've offset that with an 11% decrease in our expenses. So that is why that's what allows us to be where we're at. I will say, if you remember from previous discussions, the big project to do that secondary digester rehab, the EPA loan project, will require a sewer rate increase to cover part of that expense, the annual payment created on that loan. However, we don't know exactly what that will be until we get further into the project as far as the cost. I think even before it was estimated to be 8 to 10 cents. We will see what the new numbers and what the new provisions of the loan will be. I think they'll still write off a portion of that cost for us. I think that'll still be provided. I think we'll still qualify for some other funding with that. So, but we'll have to revisit that package, and that is anticipated to be fall, late summer, fall of this year that we'll be going through that process. So that'll come back to council.
Director, would you attribute the fact that we've kind of held the line and this year we show a decrease to the fact that our constant modernization and upgrading of the plant and replacement of old equipment has helped us keep that line?
Yes, very much so. And we'll see that as we go through each of the individual line items. So I'll point out the ones where we've been able to reduce our costs quite impressively, I do say so myself, on how things are running down there. So on the revenue side, page 2 of 7, sewer consumption. Again, you can see from 07 to 20 what we were running for consumption wise and where we're at. Deposits on agreements. Again, same as the water side. On the sewer side, that's for pay when they do connections and pay for things that we've already previously paid for. Meters sold. Again, that's the other 50% of that of our annual meter maintenance fee. Other services, and this is mainly septic, when we have septic services that dispose of their material at the wastewater treatment plant. It's additional revenue for us, and you can see there we've done pretty good here in the last few years about doing that, about increasing those revenues. Miscellaneous revenues, page 6 or 7. And operating transfers in. We've been fortunate enough on the sewer side to be able to, towards the end of the year, each year, have an overage in our O&M account, and then we transfer that money into our depreciation account to help pay for those big ticket items. So when we get to March of this year, between March and April, we'll see what our balances are and how much. We like to keep about $500,000 in the O&M balance, but anything above that we usually transfer to depreciation. That's on the revenue side. And then we go to the expense side. And this is the plant expenses, so basically all attributed to the wastewater treatment plant portion. Page 2 of 43, salaries. And you can just see the percentage increase that's represented there from the contract. Overtime is at $55,000. Overtime, again, for the treatment plant, it's weather related. We land apply over 5 million gallons of sludge a year, and we can only do that when the weather permits. This year has been extremely tough on our land application because it's been so wet. And that's also another reason why our water revenues are down, because when it's wet, they don't have to sprinkle the yards and so forth. So that's a double whammy for us. But again, overtime would be the same as last year, $55,000. Page 4, page 5, IMRF and FICA, it's out of our control. Same with page 6, the group health insurance. Uniform allowance, I just bumped that from 19 to 20 based on our last couple of years of activity. Repairs, maintenance of lift stations, normal maintenance $20,000, same as last year. Repairs and maintenance to our buildings facilities, $123,000, again, same as last year. Repair maintenance of vehicles, 26,000, same as last year. Repair maintenance contractual, it's $100,000, the same as last year. As you recall, that's a new initiative that we began last year. And we're just now, they're probably 65–70% complete on the project of, we're doing 35 manhole seals, rehabs to eliminate infiltration. So we'll be having another project which will be coming before council for review and approval after May 1 to do the next year's project. Other professional services, Marcia, this is where you're talking about, this is one of the sections there for where the, again, the what engineering that we pay for comes out of. Telephone, page 14 of 43, 11,000, same as last year. Postage, 18,000, same as last year. Utilities, I like this one a lot. Page 16 of 43. This year we're projected to be down to 210,000 from a one-time high of we were close to 600,000 in '09, and that's based on all of the modifications and updates that we have done to the plant since that time. Has really tremendously put down our electrical usage. We are now in the process where we're 1 year into a 2-year study program that and I think there's 10 other plants, total of 11 plants in northern Illinois through a ComEd program for energy efficiency. And through that project, they took readings initially when we began that in the beginning. We'll do readings at the end, and whatever electrical usage we have saved over that time period will be returned to us in the form of a grant. So we're in that process, and then basically that process is looking at everything, every process that we do down there, and how can it be more efficient? How can it be as best as it can be? And in fact, we had a visit 2 weeks ago from a retired operator from the West Coast, Seattle, Portland area. Just a wealth of knowledge, one of the leading experts in energy efficiency for wastewater treatment plants, and spent the day with us down there, and it was quite eye-opening. I think our employees got a lot out of it. So again, this year, we're projecting to be down to 210,000.
Didn't we, when we redid the blowers, didn't that drop your electric?
Oh, that was the single biggest, yeah, that was the single biggest activity, because before then, and even now, we still have 4 blowers. And as you know, and I think I probably mentioned that a time or two here, we have to have redundancy. So everything we have down at the treatment plant, we have 2 of. And just because we never stop, 24/7, it's always operating, we're always taking material in, we always got to get material out. So the blowers, they used to run 24/7 as high as they could, just pumping as much air as we can. It's a whole different mindset these days from that process. So now we still have 4 blowers, because there's times when they think, again, we probably need 2 max now, but we need 2 replacement in case something happens. So most of the time we run 1 blower, and we mostly run it probably at about 65–70% of full, and that gets us by. That takes care of the issues. And you also see when we get to the chemicals and stuff, we've dropped our chlorine usage down there tremendously. Again, just because of the modifications and the changes that have been made and coming up. Now, unfortunately, EPA is still tweaking things, doing things, coming up with more ideas. We'll be talking about phosphorus removal. There's some other things coming down the pike which might increase our costs, might cause us to change things. But again, we'll deal with those when we can. Ultimately, I think, and then we're talking long-term, many, many years out probably, long-term, I think you'll be seeing more regional treatment plants, getting rid of the small plants. And luckily, we have the provisions, the capability to have our waste go west to a more regional facility. So I think we're in a good shape that way going forward when that time comes. There's a lot of other areas around worldwide where they do that, where it's more regional. They get rid of all the smaller plants. We just recently saw that, Village of Winnebago basically closed their plant down, and now sends all their stuff to Rock River Water Reclamation. And you're going to see more of that over time as the regulations and stuff become more restrictive.
Alderman Freeman.
So is all of our savings from just less usage, or does ComEd offer credits and stuff like they do for homeowners for having more efficient equipment?
Yes. We benefit from both. We apply as much as we can for whatever ComEd incentives have, and they have a lot of incentives, and they're very aggressive in getting those incentives in place for you. They have a revenue source. Everybody's bill, customer pays, a portion of that bill goes toward their grant programs. So they're very good on getting that information out, so we take full advantage of that. And then you get the benefit of, long-term, of that savings that they pay for part of that initial installation, such as the lighting that we'll see when that comes.
Don't we also voluntarily work with them on that brownout program when there's high demand and we have the opportunity to spend down a little bit, that we get credits for that?
Yes, that's another program that ComEd has been doing for years, and we're able to take advantage of that because we have our backup generator system. So when the issues arise and ComEd needs to take advantage of that, we are notified, and we can switch our stuff over to backup power and basically come off the grid.
Thanks. Yes, Alderman Stevens.
Something I remember, under chemicals, were we still going to someday use ultraviolet to sanitize the water going out?
Yes, UV is still part of it, and let me see if I still got that. Did that make it a 5, or did that get replaced? That got bumped down farther. So UV was on the 5-year list. It's now gotten backed off a little bit because there's some other things, but yes, that'll be one of the processes that we're coming to. But basically what has happened, transpired here lately, is we've been able to reduce the chlorine usage enough that it made the cost savings going to UV that much longer to recoup that expense. So caused some other things that are costing us more to jump above them. So. Okay, moving on, 17 of 43, office equipment rental maintenance, same as last year, $6,000. Liability insurance, again, we can't do too much, but it stayed the same, so that's always a good thing. Lab expense, $40,000. You can see that's a same as last year. Sludge disposal, same as last year. And again, that's for the stuff that we can't land apply. That's basically our grit and screens. And one of our long-term projects is to be, well, I know I mentioned this before, but putting the washing machine in where we take that grit and screen material, run it through for lack of better, it's a giant washing machine that rinses it out, saves all the good bugs and the good stuff that we need for the plant operation, and takes the bad stuff and basically compacts it and puts it in a nice crisp little bale that we then take to the landfill, which will again reduce our disposal costs even further. Office supplies, page 21 of 43 is the same at $8,000. Gas and oil, $30,000, same as last year. Operating supplies, $20,000, same as last year. Chemicals, $45,000. You can see we were in 08, 09, we were running $120,000 to $130,000 for chemicals. We're down to $45,000. And again, I hesitate to reduce that down. You can see our actuals for 18 and 19, and since 16 have been even less than the 45. But I still feel comfortable leaving it at 45. And again, if we spend less than that, that goes into the old bottom line, same as what we do with the water, with the sewer. Once O&M, if our cash balance gets big enough, that over that $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 range, whatever's over that, then we'll transfer to depreciation. Meters,
Yes.
$20,000.
We have a question. Alderman Rublo.
Do we use neutralizing agencies? Because I know some people like to throw away their medicine, the pills, and flush it out. And some of those chemicals are bad, all the medicine, and it gets into the river. Do we somehow have a way to neutralize before it gets into the river, or does it just?
Through the process, through the treatment plant process, what we dispose through to the river is compliant with EPA requirements. So yes, in answer, just the process itself, basically, and probably the number one process would be the dilution factor, when somebody puts it down and then based on how much coming in.
Thank you.
Page 26 of 43, bad debt expense, 3,500. It's a little bit less than last year. Miscellaneous plan expenses, 27 of 43, 5,000, same as last year. And transfer out, again, last several years, we've been able to just take the 500,000 and put it back into the depreciation side of the ledger card. But that's a year-to-year annual, so we'll see where things are at when it comes March time. On the collection system side, salaries, you see the 308 to 384, that represents that swap from water to sewer. That's where that shows up. That's why the difference. Overtime, 30,000, same as last year. Again, 31 and 32 FICA and IMRF and the health insurance are all items that we basically do not control. Page 34, uniform allowance, the same as last year. Maintenance, repair maintenance, 40,000, same as last year. Equipment, same as last year, 12,000. Vehicles, 20,000, same as last year. Office equipment, 30,000, same as last year. Gas and oil, 10,000, same as last year. Operating supplies, 20,000, again, same as last year. You're doing all right, keep going. Miscellaneous expense, 3,000, the same as last year. Depreciation set aside, 510,000. Again, this is what we send over to our, I call it savings account side, pays for the big ticket items, lets us do those enhancements and those improvements and updates to the system, which basically makes it more economical, cheaper to run, more efficient. Bond payment set aside on page 43 of 43, 123,000. That's our annual payment for our our current EPA loan. And our second EPA loan will probably be, let's see, that was about $3 million we did on that one, wasn't it, Becky, if you remember?
Mm-hmm.
So our next one will be about $4 million,
Yeah.
so it'll be a little bit bigger, or more than double, just a little bit going forward, once that gets approved. Brings us to the capital expense on the treatment plant. Maybe. So again, broken out by the years, and then you can see how the projects are broken out, the secondary digester and the main equipment building, 2.5 million, 2.1 million respectively. So that main equipment building portion will be reduced by whatever it cost is, the final cost incurred on the gate replacement, because that's where that was at. That's where that's coming out of. That grit and screening compactor, that's the washing machine I was referring to earlier. The plant SCADA installation. Right now, on the water side, we can control everything through the computers. We can control everything through our phone system. It's all digital, it's all wireless, it's state of the art. We would like to get to that point with the wastewater treatment plant as well. That's a little bit bigger endeavor to do that. It'll take a little bit longer. Again, that's that $120,000 price tag, so we're working our way towards that. As far as equipment goes, the four-wheel drive pickup replaced 95 GMC. That was actually in this year's budget. I just haven't had a chance to do that yet, so I'm just going to postpone it and do it after May 1 since I've waited this long already. So that's a carryover basically from this year. Do we want to talk about all the depreciation stuff, or do you want to do that on your own, and if you got any questions, you can. Up to you guys, however you want to do it. We basically talked about everything already with the projects that are included in that, so that can be done. I can be done if you want me to be, if there's any more questions.
Any more questions for Director Anderson? The man who has forgotten more than we will ever know about the city and how it works. If there's one important thing, maybe the most important thing to our citizens, when they hit that handle in the morning, they want it to work. So, thank you, great presentation. Anybody else have anything else? Okay, well, moving on, we have one more item under other. There was a handout put on your desks tonight, and we don't like to do this, but they just hired a new director for the library, Lou, and he had an emergency meeting to be able to get this to us tonight. The board has asked me to appoint Denise Leonard. Her resume would seem appropriate, so I would ask for a motion to appoint Denise Leonard as a trustee of the ID Public Library Board of Trustees. May I?
Mr. Mayor, that's your appointment with their basic consent.
Right, so, motion to approve from Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Revalo. Questions or comments concerning the motion now on the floor? We have a new director. Yeah. From downstate. Seems like a nice fellow. We'll bring him to the city council to introduce him to all y'all. So a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sounds unanimous to me. At that point, I will entertain a motion for adjournment tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Crawford, second by Porter. All those in favor? Aye. Is anyone opposed? Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.